You know what? Screw it. Just launched it. And I launched it. This is January 2019, 10 p.m. at night. I woke up and made $2,000 overnight. And again, my
What?
brain exploded, right?
Welcome everyone to the Sales Ninja Show podcast. And I am excited for my next guest. We're going to jump right in. And before I do, I'm going to do an introduction. And this introduction is a pretty impressive one. And this fine young gentleman is the founder of Venly Consulting Group, and he helps B2B sales people earn $250,000 to $500,000 a year or more and develop record-breaking sales skills with his coaching and training programs for reps and teams. And this special sales expert is also an official member of the Forbes Business Council and has also been featured in Forbes, Yahoo Finance, MarketWatch, and a lot more. He's a four-time Salesforce top sales influencer, a Wall Street Journal best-selling author of Six-Figure Sales Secrets. And prior to this, he was in corporate America for 14 plus years. And in that time, he worked for two Fortune 500 organizations and was promoted over 12 times in only 8 years. He has won countless awards and has been ranked in the top percentile every single year. And in his last role, he led one of the top sales regions in the company with over 110 employees. His name is Marcus Chen, and he lives in Portland, Oregon with his wife, Sarah, and son, Roman. So we're going to give you a quick intro and get started right away. Okay, welcome Marcus to the Sales Ninja Show podcast. How are you doing, brother?
Good, Jay. I'm pumped to be here. My brother from another mother. We're going to have some fun today.
Awesome. Marcus, there are so many things I want to jump in and we don't have enough time, but maybe there's a part two here. I'm just putting it out there. You have an incredible background. I watched your 41-minute VSL on the 3 laws of helping people with their sales. And I looked at all your case studies and your screenshots and your testimonials. And I think the skill that you have is one that is very much needed and wanted by everyone that has a business, especially online. But to be able to get to where you were, you have a backstory. Everyone's got a backstory. Oriental Village. Does that sound familiar?
Oh, yeah. I was the restaurant I grew up working at as a kid.
Okay, can we go back there? Because obviously where you are today happened because you did some reps, and I'm talking reps in the Chinese restaurant. I'm talking reps in the sales world where your boss told you to do hundreds or thousands of more reps. Tell us what got you those sales muscles and skills and that basically being able to go through adversity.
Totally. I think it's interesting. In every season, I think you always learn things and you develop hopefully values or beliefs or habits that can serve you in the future, whether we realize it or not. And early on, my parents had a Chinese restaurant. They came from China, absolutely nothing. My dad was escaping the Communist Revolution. Most people wouldn't hire them. They came to Springfield, Oregon, which is a small town, one of the very few Chinese families in town. Started his own restaurant. And once I was born, a few years later, once of working age was called 5 years old.
5 years.
A good working age.
Wow.
I started working in the restaurant. Now, of course, it wasn't anything crazy. It's just like at 5, you can like chop mushrooms in the back. You can peel shrimp. You can bust tables. You can run the dishes.
Really?
Oh yeah, it's whatever I was at least tall enough to see over, I would start working on. At a young age, I grew up just working really hard, and I saw how hard my parents worked. They're working 80 plus hours a week. They didn't make very much money because margins are usually pretty tight in a restaurant, and you can't really take vacation. It's definitely a grind for sure. Now, I think fortunately that helped me not just develop our work ethic, but I saw it in action. I saw my parents doing those type of things, and that's definitely a key thing that can help, obviously, in sales. What I also saw was my parents were amazing at delayed self-gratification. The Chinese way, which is be super cheap and not spend any money until you can actually afford it. But to this day, they're still very cheap, even though they don't have to be. But learning this type of mindset of just delayed gratification, doing hard things regardless of how you feel, just show up regardless, it developed a certain way of thinking and belief system, which obviously helped me in sales. Now, the thing is, those are just certain components that obviously help you. Like when I actually got into B2B sales, when I first got started, like I was like, I work really hard. I've had other internships. I've worked hard. I've done a good job. And because I worked hard and showed up and did what people didn't want, what no one else wanted to do, I stood out in a really good way. So I figured in B2B sales, it would be exactly the same. I dove in head first. And this is in June 2007. And by the way, this is against my parents' wishes because
Really?
Yeah, because they wanted me very typical, they wanted me to be a doctor, a lawyer, an accountant, right?
Yeah.
And before I started college, I didn't wanna do any of those things, I told them that. And they
Mm.
said I grew up very creative, loving to draw and do art and stuff like that, so they said, "Hey, maybe you can be an architect or something." That sounds like a good idea. So I actually, like, had my application filled out for the University of Oregon Applied
Wow.
Arts and Architecture School. I was about to turn it in, and my parents were like, "Hey, there's this guy in town in Eugene, Oregon. He comes in all the time. He's got a very successful architecture firm. Would you like to go check it out?" I said, "Sure, that'd be great. I love to job shop where you can see what it's all about." And in my mind, I'm picturing like late nights building models,
Yeah, yeah,
drafting tables. This is I just that's what I picture. They don't have any of those things. And everyone's on computers. They use AutoCAD software.
yeah,
and the
yeah.
architects are like just sitting there building their models. And I'm like, wait, hold on, where's the drafting tables? Where's the models? They're like, we haven't used that in years, man. It's all on the computer. I'm like, oh, it's not what I expected. So I actually took the application and threw it in the garbage, and I went undeclared. So anyway, so I didn't really know what I was gonna do. So I ended up just like, you know what? I'll get my Chinese major. Let's get business. Like, that's a general thing. So when I graduated, I was fortunate. I actually had 5 different job offers on the table, and it was like 29.5 base salary to like 60K base salary from like this like B2B sales role to like analyst roles in a bank. And my parents like, obviously, you gotta take the highest paying one. But for me, I'm like, I see the opportunity in B2B sales where I think I can develop other skills. I can probably like lead a team. I can learn about business. I see a lot of potential upside. So I declined the other ones against their wishes, but for the lowest paying one.
Mm.
Because I was like, well, I was stupid. I thought things were linear. So I'm like, if year one, like I'm a 29.5 base salary. If I do okay, maybe I can make 50K. Maybe then year two, I'll make 75. Then year three, I'll make 100. Then I was like, this is how life should be like. I just didn't thought that way. And honestly, life is not like that at all. But anyways, I went all in on that B2B sales role against their wishes. And this
Mhm.
is June 2007. So there's already talks about the recession about to hit. So I'm like, okay, whatever. I'm just gonna go all in. And I'm outworking everybody. The most calls, the most cold emails. It was also physical, like walking to businesses. I did the most cold calls walking to businesses, get my face kicked in. I had the highest activity, but the worst results. So like after like about 7 weeks, I hadn't closed a single deal. And my boss pulled me into the office at 4 o'clock on a Friday, which is never a good conversation, as you can imagine.
Yeah,
He
yeah,
was
yeah.
like, "Hey, listen, if you don't turn this around, I'm gonna fire you. I'm not the position to perform, so I
Wow.
fire you." I'm like, "Oh my god." And at this point, I'm like, unemployment was creeping up too. So I'm like, if I get fired, then I probably won't be able to get a job. I don't really have any real sales skills. What am I gonna do? So, anyways, fast forward, eventually figured it out and then had some decent success as you shared. Yeah, man, that's the background. But being in the restaurant early on definitely taught me some good values and like habits that definitely served me well, not just in sales, but just in my career, my life overall.
Wow. So you got the lowest paying job where I think the number was like almost half, right? 29K base salary
Yeah.
versus a
29
60K.
29,500 to be specific.
Wow. Wow. In your video that I watched, the 41-minute video, you also said that you worked harder and the bosses really didn't train you, they didn't teach you, they didn't have a sales process and SOP, that kind of thing. And I found that having done enterprise SaaS sales, like there was really no guidelines. There was no real, hey, this is how you do it. But you went from this award-winning corporate sales guy where everyone was trying to learn from you because you were getting so much success. How did you switch from that to an entrepreneur? Because you had a cushy job, you had amazing commissions, 600, 700,000, close to a million. People would be like, you're living the dream. Like what? And I know the answer to this, but for the rest of the audience that's listening, why would you forfeit that? And your parents are like, you made it to
Mhm.
now going off on your own where it's a big risk.
Super scary. It's super hard decision to make also as well. And here's the thing. I remember when I was in my corporate career, I never wanted to be an entrepreneur. I associate entrepreneurship with pain because I saw how hard my parents worked, right? So like
Ah,
I
true.
felt the rough months. I remember literally 7 years old walking in to the restaurant with my parents and someone had broken in overnight, smashed the glass door, broken in, stole alcohol, broke the cash register, stole money out.
Oh
And I
man.
saw the level of stress and worry. And I'm thinking to myself, like, we're gonna be homeless.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
to me, I felt that pain. I felt their stress, and I saw how hard they worked. I also saw when they closed the restaurant for 2 weeks to actually take a vacation a decade later,
Yeah.
they didn't make any money that time. They were stressed.
Mm.
I also didn't because of my small frame of reference, I didn't realize obviously there's many types of entrepreneurship, there's many opportunity vehicles within entrepreneurship. I just saw pain. So I
Mm.
was like, there's no way I can do this. I much rather work for somebody else. on someone else's dime and get paid to learn and build a long, stable career, have stability, and just do that. Like, and that's kind of my plan. And I was in corporate for over 14 years for 2 companies, and
Yeah.
it's crazy when I talk to a lot of people, they're like, "How did you say only 2 companies?" I'm like, "It was intentional design." I look for companies where
Mm.
I'm hope I can retire with. That's the goal. I remember fast forward, so it's called 2015, and at this point, I've been in my corporate career for 7, 8 years, and I'm like, life is good. Like I'm like 31, 30 around there. And I was running a team of 85 employees. I had influence, people respected me, I had results, I had the income, I had the dream home, I had the dream cars. I'm like, looks good. And what was interesting was around that time, whenever people think about what's their mission, what their why, I realized at that
Mhm.
time I really had no idea.
Mm.
And I realized what had really driven me for the last almost decade was that's what it was, is operating out of fear of just being poor and homeless and not having stability just because of my upbringing. And I remember reading actually a book by Brendon Burchard called High Performance Habits.
Mm.
Inside there, he talks about if you were to die tomorrow, what 3 words would you want to be known for on your
Mhm.
grave or what your people say about you?
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
like,
yeah.
what
Yeah.
is that? It took me a little bit to figure out, and I realized it was 3 things, and these 3 things helped shape my future. But the first one was like, number 1 was influence, and not in a
Mm.
cheesy influencer type of way, but to have a positive impact to anybody I interact with. So this could be a server at a restaurant, this could be the custodian, this could be the audience who's watching this could be clients, this could be people online, whatever. If I can influence them, help them in some way, shape, or form to add some value to their lives, that would mean a lot to me. So that's something that was number 1. The second thing was legacy. Now, not in like a cheesy, like, I want to build a legacy, but more so like the people I've influenced, they could take those things they hopefully have learned and influenced by to impact other people. So to me, that was really powerful to basically almost have this like network effect of just impacting other people, right? Very fulfilling. And then the third is love, and not in like a
Mm.
cheesy, mushy type of love, but to know that whatever I do with 100% care and intention. So people know like I'm giving 100% in that moment, right? So those 3 things. Now, when I realized that, I realized, wow, even though I have a high level influence here and I can impact the legacy, I can do the love thing in my current role, can I do it outside of my organization? Now, this is a Fortune 500 company. So not only was I able to positively influence not just my direct market of 85 people at the time, I could impact other people as well because I'll run big training for other teams. So I could have this influence as well. Now, I was like, can I do more beyond that? And this is like the first like inkling of, hey, what else could I do potentially? Now,
Mm.
at the time, I'm seeing like, hey, there are these people posting online, there's influencers and whatnot. I'm like, what else could I do? And I remember listening to a podcast. It was by Pat Flynn called Smart Passive Income. And one of the things he talked about was you can write ebooks. And this is before everyone, the mother had ebooks. Okay. This is like
Wow.
2014, 2015, around that time. And I remember at this point, I had been promoted 12 times in the last 8 years or so. And a lot of people were asking me, hey, Marcus, like, how did you do that? And I'm like, I don't know. I worked really hard. I showed up. I don't know. And they would say, you should write a book. Now, this is before I actually wrote a physical book. But I was like, that sounds crazy. Why would I write a book? You know what? Maybe I could do that ebook thing I heard about. So I bought this little course PDF thing from Pat Flynn, and which is how do you write an ebook and like basically automate it. So what I didn't understand was like people could buy stuff online. Like, how do they do that? How do I set
Mhm.
up a landing page? How to make it like a payment processor? How do I automate so I don't have to manually send them like in my Gmail account, like the whatever I'm selling them? I'm like, what can I do? So I actually wrote an ebook. I called it The Corporate Climb. How I got promoted 10 times in 10 years. I thought it was a little more catchy than 12 times in 8 years. So I wrote
Yeah,
this
yeah,
book
yeah, yeah.
and I remember writing it. Then I was posting on Instagram every day at the time, it's like 2015. And I just launched it to my Instagram audience. That's a separate page. And within 10 minutes, I made $9.95. And my brain exploded because in all my past history, in any role I've been in the restaurant, here's the food, there's the money. Makes sense. It's like a
Ah.
physical in-person
Yeah, yeah,
transaction.
yeah.
When I was selling speedos in a speedo store, here's a product, here's the money. In my B2B sales roles, like we're signing contract, we're like interacting in person. Like I'm like, whoa. I talked to nobody and just someone gave me $9.95.
Mm.
It opened my eye, like, wow. And then like, and then it
Mm.
was cool. That yeah, that was really cool. Thank you so much. That's high value. Then I'm like, what else could I create that be high value? Again, I didn't want to be an entrepreneur. I'm like, this is just another way for me to leverage the influence and legacy piece. So I'm like, okay, what does the market need? And I'm like, what do people ask me a lot of questions on? I'm like, shoot, I've been running teams now for years. I'm in the field all the time. I'm hiring new people. And I'm like, even people that I would hire that were top reps in other companies, they would lack the basic fundamentals to actually be really
Mm.
good at sales. So sometimes they
Mhm.
maybe they had a good offer, or maybe they just had just really easy leads or easy product or whatever. Most of them actually lack fundamental takes them from cold to close. I'm like, oh, I should do it. And these based off the question that they're asking, I should create a sales course. And this is
Mm.
before everyone in the mother has tried to create a sales course on Gumroad. But at the time, like there's only really B2C sales courses. I'm like, huh, we need one for B2B. So this is, I think it's 2017 when kind of epiphany. So I'm like, okay, so for the next 2 years, because at this point I was traveling a lot because I grew my org to 110 plus employees. I was in a hotel room 100 plus nights a year, and I was traveling
Whoa.
quite a bit, right? So it was a lot of pressure, etc. But I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, and I had a young kid too, so I had a kid in 2017. So I'm like, oh man, like there's all this stuff. I'm very busy, so it took me 2 years to like. Oh, actually, I bought a course and how to create a course and like basically build the back end automation. So then I took 2 years to build all of it in just after hours. And I remember after I built it, it took me 2 years. After I'm like, anybody buy this? I don't think so. I don't know. Imposter syndrome. I was like, I don't think I should do this. And then I'm like, okay, you know what? Screw it. Just launched it. And I launched it. This is January 2019, 10 p.m. at night. I woke up and made $2,000 overnight. And again,
What?
my brain exploded, right? I was like, no sales call, no meetings, no
Wow.
multi-threading, no complex anything. I'm like, that's interesting. But even after I was also like, I don't know about this, but I'll tell you what, that initial itch I had that started in 2015
Mhm.
was getting itchier because I wanted to do
Mm.
more. I wanted to do more. Then from there, I was like, okay, maybe this is a fluke, but people kept buying. And the now it's cool. But the best part was I'll get these emails after even a couple of days, like, oh, that was this thing you taught in discovery is really impactful. I'm like, amazing. And then some people
Mm.
will actually ask me about one-on-one coaching. So it just like created more income as a result. And then I could really see the impact now in other industries because I was a little fearful. I was working in other industries, and people were in all types of industries. They were in SaaS and payroll and ad tech, all types of things, and they were getting results. I'm like, wow, like my hypothesis that people lack the actual process to actually be effective in sales was 100% true. Now you're gonna laugh. The name of the program at the time was Sales Ninja School. Okay,
What? Are you for real?
100%. Welcome to
Cool.
Sales Ninja School.
So we were
So
meant to meet. That's
100%.
awesome.
So anyway, so then at that point, I'm like, wow, this is like really cool. And I thought at that point, I realized I'm like, wow, this could be an opportunity vehicle, right? This can be an opportunity vehicle for me to go all in and do my own thing. Now, a little also a back part of the story is because I grew up so poor, I'm pretty fiscally responsible. Some people call me cheap,
Mm.
but I'm pretty good managing my money, investing, and I've been doing that since I started investing at
Wow.
18, but I was already doing that. So over the time, because I was stacking cash and equity, I was constantly reinvesting and building that up. So I'm like, okay, I'm like emotionally, I want to go all in on this business, this opportunity, and leave and do my own thing because this would be a really
Mm.
good way for me to drive the influence piece of what's important to me, my mission, and also the legacy piece. Now, logically, I'm like, this is really comfortable. It's a hard job for sure, but I'm like, got a great income, I got a great life, I have status, I have influence, I have power. Like I'm flying around in corporate jets. I'm like life was looking pretty good, especially on the outside. But inside, I'm like, I
Mhm.
think I can do more. So when I ran the numbers, I'm like, okay, you know what? With what I have, if the business completely fails for like a couple decades, we'd be totally fine the monthly burn we have now, even with inflation. So I'm like,
Mm.
logically, even we overspend, we'll have a pretty big buffer, right? Now, obviously, I don't want to go and just blast all my cash and just waste all of it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But I felt this is worth it. But I'm like, at the very least, I'm like, I can go all in for a year. If it absolutely fail horribly, burn a bunch of cash in that time, I'll go back to corporate. I'll go back to the same company, or I'll get a job as a sales VP or CRO somewhere. So at that point, again, I didn't leave quite yet because I had things in play I had to play out. So for example, this is like March when I realized I should do this move. I had a couple months left in my fiscal year, and I wanted to hit President's Club again. So we were pretty tight to that line. I would have a trip in August, right? So I want my free 5-star resort trip. And then I would also had stock I was going to invest as well. And I knew we had an earnings call in September, which would increase the stock price so I can cash out and build an extra buffer as well. Hit President's Club, had my trip, timed it all out. Literally the day after the call, I'm out. So that was
What?
September
Oh, yeah?
2019 was the day I officially started my business.
Wow.
That's how I made the move. Yeah. It's been a crazy
That's
journey
crazy,
since.
man.
Almost 5 years now.
That's in
Yeah.
Yeah. Were you seriously, and I know this is a weird place to chime into what you just said. Were you really selling speedos?
Yeah, I was it's interesting. So in I was 18 or 17, my parents had just sold the restaurant. This is like
Ah.
2002, and I was
Yeah, yeah.
freaking out because I'm gonna go to
Wow.
the University of Oregon.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I actually was really fortunate because I applied and did all these things. I actually ended up getting a full ride to school there. But it didn't cover like other stuff, like living expenses. It didn't cover like books. So at least the tuition
Mm.
piece.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
for the full time. So I'm like, okay, that's really cool. But I was depending on the restaurant. Like, they paid me at that point, fortunately. I was depending on the income from there. Even though it was like minimum wage, I was depending
Yeah,
on that
yeah.
income to cover everything else. So when they sold, I'm like, they sold like summer before I started. I'm like, what am I like? Where am I gonna make money? And I'm like, okay, so I have to get an actual job somewhere else. I never applied anywhere before. I never like worked anywhere else outside my parents' thing. At that point, I first applied, like they had classified ads back then on Craigslist, and I kind of
Yeah,
applied
yeah.
and
Yeah.
get any interviews. I remember even
Wow.
trying to get a job at the gym at the school, and they hired everyone. I didn't make it through the interviews.
Really?
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know. So I'm like, "Oh my god, this is so hard." And I was talking to my swim coach. I was still swimming. I swam competitively year round.
Oh, okay.
That's where the speed of things came in place.
Ah,
And he's like, "Hey, Marcus, like the other coach on this other team, they're all friends. They actually opened a swimsuit store, and it was a company called JD Pence, and they're really well known in the Portland area, but not well. They would show up at swim meet. They want to open a location in Eugene, right by campus, actually. So it was like
hmm,
5 minutes walking. So he's like, you
mhm.
should talk to Bill and see if maybe you can maybe get a job there. I'm like, great. So I talked to Bill, and he hired me on like for minimum wage. And it was actually a really fun job because it had a retail store. So people would come in for retail stuff to buy speedos and other gear. But then we'd have
Yeah.
competitive swimmers come in and do that as
Oh.
well. And then when there were swim meets, I got to go to the swim meets and run the events. So basically, what I would do is like
Ah.
I wake up at like 4 a.m. or 3 a.m. depending on where it was. I
Oh
would
my gosh.
drive to the store. I will load up their 1997 Ford Ranger pickup truck with a canopy, fill like boxes of speedos and competitive swim gear, fill it up, drive an hour or 2 hours to that whatever town that was in. I would set up like stands of stuff with tables and racks, and I would
Wow.
stand there for about 14 hours and like
What?
be slinging swim gear, right? But what's funny is because they'd only send just me, right? And
Really?
I wouldn't even go to the bathroom the whole time because I was so scared that someone would steal stuff
Wow.
because it's
Oh
just
my
like
god.
racks of stuff in like at a
Yeah, yeah,
school
yeah.
in the lobby or by the pool area. So
You didn't go to
like,
the water for 14 hours?
yeah, so I would like, go right when I got there, unload the truck because I don't want to get in trouble. I don't want someone to steal the stuff, and then I would go and like, not drink any water, eat anything or very little the whole
On
day
purpose.
on purpose
Wow.
because I want to make sure I can like do my thing. And so it'd be crazy. So I'd probably get there at maybe 5 or 6 a.m. and then I'll probably leave there about six p.m. I'll pack everything up, lock it up, run to the bathroom, and then like empty everything out. And then I would like drive to like Quiznos. They at
Yeah.
least comp that, and I'm
The
getting paid
subs.
minimum wage.
Yeah,
So I'll get
yeah.
two massive like sandwiches, crush them. Yeah, I still ate like I was 18 years old, so I would crush them, and then I'd drive an hour, 2 hours back, and then I'd probably get back at like 8, maybe 9 p.m. And then I do the same thing again like 6 hours later, 6, 7 hours later.
What?
Work again. Yeah. So yeah, and
They
you
must
know
have
what?
they must have loved you.
Here's the thing. Not only do they love that because most people weren't willing to do that. I didn't realize, but I would like double or triple sales every time I ran the events. So even it was the same thing actually even in the stores. They'd be like, "You're how are you always doubling and tripling?" So I remember the owner
Yeah,
called me. She's like, "Hey, what are you doing?" I'm like, "I don't know. What
yeah.
do you mean?" She's like, "Every time you're in the store or you're in the meets, literally you like sell double, triple everyone else." I'm like, "I don't know what to tell you. I'm just like helping people. I don't know what you mean." So my boss is like, "I'm gonna watch what you do." I'm like, "All right, that's
Yeah,
interesting."
yeah.
So
Yeah,
I'm in
yeah.
the store. He's watching me the whole day, and then he's, "I got it. I see what you did."
You did?
I'm like, "Okay, tell
Okay.
me, what did I do?" It's like when you
Yeah.
talk to like people who do well in sales, most of them have no idea. They're like, "I just
Yeah, yeah,
work
yeah.
hard. I just do this." I'm like, "No, there's always these things they don't realize."
There's a
Those steps.
process, law of
Yeah,
process.
exactly. So they're like, "Okay, a few things you do differently." Number one, so most of the retail associates would just sit behind the computer. People come. It's a very small store. They're like, "Hey, welcome in." I wouldn't. I literally like they came in. I already saw them pull up. Like it's all glass. I'd open the door for them. Hey, welcome JD Pence. How can I help you today? So they're like already like surprised. It's just the restaurant guy from background. I'm like, that's what you did. Oh, and usually they'd be like, oh, listen, we're just getting some. We just need to get a new swimsuit for practice for my kid. I said, okay,
Yeah.
cool, no worries. And then they push me on the door. I make they're at ease. They're going, and if they had questions, whether they had questions or not. So let's say they came up and they say, "Cool, we're gonna get this whatever it's a drag suit for practice." And I would say, okay, cool. Like I was like, can I make you a recommendation? Because oftentimes, because they didn't understand the fabrics, they
Yeah,
would get
yeah,
something
yeah.
that fall apart in chlorine. Type of
Ah,
example. So I'll say, hey,
right.
would you be okay if I made a recommendation? They're always a little resistant. Oh, I'm not sure. Like they're gonna try to upsell me. I'm like, there's nothing wrong with the suit. This is a great suit. The only thing is, this is actually better for racing. They're like, what? I'm like, yeah. So like the material is made of lycra versus if you utilize something like say polyester, it's just a little more durable and it lasts a lot longer. So you don't have to keep buying new suits. Like, what would
Smart.
that make more sense? It's about the same cost actually, but it's
Oh
just a
my gosh.
better product for you. And they're like, "Oh,
Yeah.
bizarre." Now they're building trust. And
Mm,
then they get in that now say, "Hey, listen, so do you already have backup goggles for practice?" They're like, "What?" I'm like, "Think about it, like, how many pairs of goggles do they have?" "One pair of goggles." "Okay, what do they use it for?" "They use it for races, they use it for practice." I'm like, "Okay, has it ever happened where you're at a meet and
yeah,
the
yeah.
strap breaks?" They're like,
Yeah,
"Yeah,
yeah.
it's really stressful." I'm like, "Exactly, because chlorine eats away the straps." So,
Mm,
this is actually why most people have a racing set of goggles, and they also have practice goggles. So they don't
mm.
have to have that type of risk. Oh my god, that's a good point. And before you know it, like that single order, like they suddenly
Mhm.
got practice goggles, and then they realized they need racing goggles, and they also need a racing suit. So before double, triple, quadruple, because I wasn't trying to sell them anything. I was merely educating them and helping them on a better way of doing things. That's all I did. It wasn't anything crazy.
See, that's the thing. I was just doing a workshop with one of my clients on Ikigai, the reason of
Mhm.
being, the purpose, and finding your sweet spot. You're operating in your sweet spot, and your boss had to see what you didn't see at the time,
That's
that
right.
there was a process of not hard selling, but educating, trying to help them make a better decision. And I
That's
can
it.
see how and why you did so well because you're just giving them some permissive based consultative selling where you're
Mhm.
giving them some amazing education so that they can actually save more money, be better prepared, and actually get ahead in life
That's
or in
right.
their competitions. So that's brilliant. So one of the guys asked, did you were you compensated well for all that work that you did selling those speedos and doubling and tripling your
No, not at all. Minimum wage was like $7 or $7.50 an hour, something along those
I
lines.
remember those
Actually,
days. I remember
I
those
remember
days.
it was definitely like it was like whatever it was. That's what I was getting paid. But
Yeah.
I did get to have 2 Quiznos sandwiches on those days that I was at the swim meets.
That they covered?
Exactly. So, but at this point, I didn't even understand the concept of commission. That wasn't like a thing
Mm,
in my mind.
that's so true.
I had no
Yeah.
frame of reference. I'm just thinking, like, hey, I've only known it working getting paid by the hour. So my parents pay me by the hour, and I also got tips as well. So I'm like, that's really cool. So I got a little bit of results-based performance, but I wasn't thinking that way. So I'm just thinking this is really cool. If I do certain things, I'm actually at the food booth or at the restaurant, we'll get more tips. So it was just a different time for me because I'm 18, 19. I didn't even know about commission rules till probably college, like a little bit later in college. I think it was
Wow.
when I was getting recruited to do like sell vector knives. I never did that, but
Oh
I'm
my
like,
gosh.
oh, that's interesting.
Yeah,
That's an
yeah.
interesting concept. I'm like,
I used to work a minimum wage. It was $7, same similar as you, so we might be similar ages. But I was doing warehouse work for my dad's. Is pre Costco, where they were doing warehouses that
uh,
provided confectionery and different products for variety stores and hobby shops and stuff like that. So I
mhm,
did that for 7 years, and I remember one of the gentlemen that had his own office. He was an older Jewish man, and he had a ragged, ripped hat, ripped shirt, ripped jeans, and he looked like he was a homeless guy, like a
yeah,
hobo, right?
yeah,
And apparently he had a mansion and 5 supercars even back
yeah.
then. But the police thought he was stealing the car because of the way he was dressed. So on his
Totally.
Camaro convertible, he would get pulled over by the police and say, "Whose car are you stealing?" What I found out at an early age was he was the top seller and he was
Mm,
100% commission based. And he
yeah.
had secured the contract for I'm in Toronto, but all the Ontario provincial parks, he
Oh,
had
wow.
secured all the contracts for them, which is why he
Yeah,
did. Now, this might be a stereotypical question, but you and I are both Asian. I'm Korean, you're
true.
Chinese, but discrimination,
Yeah,
martial arts, did any
yeah.
of those have a play growing up at all?
Oh, yeah, of course. It's interesting, right? I grew up in a predominantly white town. I remember going to class, especially like when I was younger, if it was like 30 kids, there maybe be 1 or 2 Asian kids,
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah,
then maybe 1 black kid. And for sure, we were all friends. Like, just like a natural bond.
yeah, yeah.
And of course, and early on, I got made fun of a lot, especially as a young kid, because I didn't start speaking, until I was 4 years old, and when I did speak, I had a
Oh
speech
yeah.
impediment, so I had to go through
Mhm.
speech therapy for years. So people made fun of me, so I was very introverted, didn't really talk much because I couldn't really didn't know how to communicate, if you will. Now, what's interesting is as I started getting older, people would make fun of you, and actually, I never took any martial arts. I wanted to, but growing up, I think because I didn't know how to communicate well. I didn't know how to manage my emotions. I would get angry a lot. So I had a temper problem.
Oh,
So my parents were like,
okay.
"Oh
Me
no,
too.
if we put you in martial arts, you're just gonna beat all the kids up." Early on, like I had some aggression issues because I didn't know how to communicate. Like my mom's like, "We were 5 years old. You just knocked this kid out." I'm like, "What?"
What? For
She's like, "Yeah."
real?
Oh yeah. She's like when you get angry, you'll just punch things. So
Oh,
I'm like,
wow.
yeah, that's how it was. So I never got to do that to take martial arts. Of course, what ends up happening is like being Asian and being very one of the few ones, like you get teased a little bit, right? Oh, my last name is
Mhm.
Chan. Oh, are you related to Jackie Chan? Oh, is Bruce Lee your dad?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
you all know martial arts? And the thing was like, I don't think kids were trying to be mean. They're trying to build a bond, even though obviously it was in a weird way. So as a kid,
Yeah,
I'm like,
yeah.
ah, ha ha ha, no, or yeah, my dad is Jackie Chan. What are you gonna do about it? I play it off as more defense mechanism, right? Like it's just a lot of times I find like, they just have no idea. And obviously, as I got older and I went to university, far more diverse, and it was actually really cool. Like, all right, cool. Like there's like more people just like me. Like
Mm,
that's nice. For most part, yeah, for sure. There's a weird time people would discriminate or just say things that were like not right. But I'm like, at the end of the day, I'm like, okay, this dude's like 80 years old. He grew up in a totally different
mm.
time. If he's gonna tell me that he likes Oriental rugs, like he likes Oriental people, all right, it is what it is. Okay, like I'm like, all right, man. If he's gonna say, "Do you people celebrate Christmas?" I'm like, "Oh, what? Oh, you mean Americans? Because I'm born in America, sir." Yes, I do celebrate Christmas. Like, yes, I do.
My goodness.
I rolled it.
What was one of the biggest challenges like that you've been in a lot of sales with 80 to 100 people? So there's a difference between being in your sweet spot and digging your heels and staying in your lane to do amazing work. Then there's the other job of actually managing salespeople who are all over the spectrum from
Oh yeah.
lazy, not hardworking, not coachable, to people who are rock stars. And you're in B2B space, which is a new space for me that I'm getting into. But how do you find when you're managing and helping scale companies? I was a pastor for 10 years, and the running joke was the church is a great place if the people weren't there, because people are just troublesome and they're headaches, right?
Hard. Yeah.
Yeah. What's one of the biggest challenges you had? Maybe there's a story of dealing with a very difficult person or a team, and how did you overcome that?
So I have tons of those examples. I want to talk about some of the shifts because I think there's different
Yeah,
shifts
yeah.
you have to kind of make, right? So I
Yeah.
think the first hard shift was actually going from individual to running a team. That
Yeah.
is like super hard shift because the things that probably made you really good in sales, being like type A, running a tight process, like being like super like anal retentive and like
Yeah,
micromanaging
yeah,
every
yeah.
part of the process and like being super means knowing your numbers and micromanaging yourself and that's a super like deep level. It aren't always the same ones that's going to show well as a leader because now
So true.
you might come off as a micromanager trying to control.
Right, right.
The first thing I realized, and this is a big epiphany, was the people on my team, the people I bring in, they are not me
Hmm.
and I should not expect them to be me. So that was like the first mistake I made, which was I remember it was January 2008, and first 3 months in sales, I almost got fired. Fourth month, number one. Fifth month, number one. Sixth month, number one. And my boss said, "Hey, Marcus, we want to give you an opportunity to lead people." I'm like, "Oh my god, I'm
Mhm.
getting promoted! Amazing!" He said, "It's not a promotion." Okay, well, what do you want? What do you want, Bill? He's okay. His name is Bill actually as well in this role now. Different Bill, obviously. There's another operation. We want you to take over. It's a small operation. There's only 2 salespeople, but we're not going to promote you. We want you to go over there. You're gonna have your own territory, own number to deliver, and you're going to like work with them. You're not the boss. They don't report to you because you're the same title, same everything. We're not going to pay you anymore. But if you go over there, if you can turn them around, we will promote you. But you got to
Hmm.
show us you can not just keep selling really well, but also deliver as a leader. So I
Hmm.
remember I'm like, this is awesome. I'm gonna
Hmm.
totally show him how I do things and show them how awesome this is.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
I
yeah.
had a little bit of an ego for sure. That definitely happened, which never helps in any role. So I go, I'm like, I read like the perfect 30, 60, 90-day plan, right? The whole sales playbook and process. And like day one is it January 2008. Day one, I go in there and I'm like, hey guys, this is what we're going to do over the next like 30, 60, 90 days. We're going to do this. I have a whole plan. I'm like, because you've been doing these things wrong. And that's why this is behind. This is why they're going to close this operation. I'm going to turn this around. We're going to turn this around. We're going to be awesome. I remember looking at them and they had just the typical body language, like arms crossed. Oh, they're
Yeah,
all
yeah.
older than me as well. So they were like
Oh my
25, 30.
God.
I'm like 22 years old. All right.
Oh my God.
And fresh face, pimply type of college kid type look. And so I remember like leaving that day thinking, oh my God, I think I messed up. I shouldn't lead people. I should just be just my own thing. I should just be a seller. That's all I can do. I remember sitting down with my girlfriend, now wife, and girlfriend at the time, and I'm like, hey, babe, like I think I think Bill made a mistake. I think I should go back to my other operation, just sell again. He should put someone else in place. I can't do this. I told her. She was like, how did you walk through the plan with them? I told her. She's like, how would you do it that way? I'm like, what? She's like, hey, listen, do they trust you? Do they know you? They should, because I've
Mm.
been number one last 3 months. She's like, get the results. Do they trust you as a person? Do
Wow.
they feel heard? Do they feel like, did you give them any, did they give you any feedback? Did they tell you what was wrong? Did you seek to figure out what was wrong? Like, well, I know what's wrong. I'm like, well, do you? I'm like, yeah, I guess I don't really know. And I had to really look in the mirror there. So that was like the first
Mm.
tip. So next day I went and apologized to everyone. I'm like, hey, listen, I'm really sorry. Overstep. I'm really nervous. And
Mm.
he put me in this role, and I know we're all the same, but he basically wants me to turn around. Otherwise, he's gonna think I'm a failure, and I don't want that to happen. I don't want to let Bill down.
Mm.
And I had to change my approach a little bit. So that was like
Mhm.
probably one first major shift from just going from like individual to like leading teams. Now,
Mm.
fortunately, during this time, I've learned a lot in terms of like leadership and like getting promoted, leading other teams, still carrying the bag and leading other teams. So like learning how to build trust first for sure was
Yeah, yeah.
definitely a key thing to like to be for taking over any team. So
Mm.
fortunately, a year after that, I took over another operation. I had to do the same thing. So I knew what to do.
Wow.
I'm like,
Yeah, yeah,
okay.
yeah.
And then I did it again. And then went to a whole new company. I took a two-step promotion, and I was on the team selling with the team, and sold really well. Got promoted in 9 months, and then I did the same thing again because I knew now. I'm like, okay, I know exactly what to do, build trust, and how to like scale these teams up because I made the mistakes before, right? Now, so that's the first big piece. The second big thing I would say in a challenging situation, I would say this is probably still relatively early on because I eventually learned from this mistake. But I remember this was like I think it was my second operation I took over, and there was a guy who is not performing. And I took over and like
Mhm.
I did my normal thing where I built trust first, got their insight, then kind of put together a plan. We started everyone was getting better overall. This one guy, after a few months, was not performance is like probably actually getting worse.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I won't say his name in case he watches later, but it was getting
Sure,
worse. And we're
sure.
probably like 3, 4 months in, and we're getting to a spot where I'm like, dude, this guy's not gonna make it. I'm gonna have to put
Yeah,
together
yeah.
a plan and probably have to fire this guy. So I remember just like sitting him down. I'm like, hey man, dude, like, how do you think you're doing? He's like, I'm doing terrible.
Mm.
He's like, I'm like, okay. I'm like, dude, you understand, like, if you keep missing your number, we're gonna have to put you on a performance plan and just fire you. You do realize that. And he's like, why would you fire me? This is your fault. I'm like, what?
What?
He's like, "This is
Really?
your fault." Yeah, this is what he said. I'm like, "This is your fault." I'm like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "You haven't really been training me. You
Oh,
haven't really been coaching me.
wow.
Like, you haven't given me any support. So, like, how do you expect me to win?" And I realized some of the other people, I just had to provide them a little bit of guidance and support, and they're able to figure it out. At this point, I hadn't really done a good job with this, and I think even with the other
Mm.
people, I literally just kinda had a sales playbook written out and it's read, and they were probably a little more ambitious, right, if you will.
Right, right,
So,
right. Yeah.
probably a little more street savvy as well. Not everyone's gonna be like that, and this guy was definitely not like that at all. So, if I just gave him, like, a Word doc printed out with the frameworks, he probably wouldn't even open it, which he probably didn't, right?
Mm. Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
and
yeah.
and for me, I really had to look in the mirror at that point. I'm like, because my instinct first was like, "You're wrong because I gave you that Word document. Like, you
Mm.
should have done all the work. I don't know what to tell you, man. Like, you're a grown man, dude. You're older than me, 24 years, 23, 24 years old. I'm like, dude, you're a grown man. Like, you should just read it and figure it out." And then I realized that's pretty much how I got started in sales. That's what my boss kind of did to
Mm.
me.
That's
And
right. Yeah, yeah.
it's like you don't want to be your dad if you had a bad dad.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
yeah,
I
yeah.
call my parents. Like that was like the realization. I'm like, he is totally spot on. And that was like
Mm.
a really good feedback loop for me. And I'm really glad he did
Mm.
that. I'm like really
Mm.
glad. I
Mm.
found the toughest lessons I've learned was because I lacked self-awareness to see the problem and I didn't realize the problem was me. So
Mm.
at that point, I had to really reflect back and I took a step back and I realized I didn't really have a process for properly training. And
Mm.
it wasn't just onboarding, but I didn't really have a good onboarding plan. It was loose. It was too loose. It wasn't like good enough.
Mm. Yeah,
So
yeah.
like I had to really put the onboarding plan. I had no idea about onboarding plans at the time because I'm like I just built something I
Mhm.
thought would be useful. So I built a better onboarding plan. But on top of that, it wasn't just an onboarding plan. I started building weekly trainings with the whole team, and because I wasn't really doing that, I had a sales meeting. We just talked about numbers, and that was really it. There was no
Mhm.
really weekly training. On top of that, I also wasn't really doing one-on-ones. So there's the other components that just obviously help drive a sales force together. So I started doing one-on-ones every single week, regardless, just without fail. And honestly, I got better at things over time. But also, I was selfish as a leader because I also had my own quota to hit as well. So
Mm.
like when at time I'm in the field running my own appointments. I wasn't really in the field riding with them. So I
Mm,
wasn't going to appointments with them to see what they're really doing. I wasn't helping build their skills and the fundamentals in that role, but also beyond that role too. So that was like just a major realization. So I started doing these things. So I basically had to build a better version of onboarding train at the time. I had a consistent training cadence with the team every single week. I was in the field and on appointments with them every single week. I had weekly
mm,
one-on-ones. So I started providing far more support. And he was like a good rep, but he was never an amazing rep. But his skills got better.
mm.
Right? He unfortunately is one. I think everyone's got a certain level of peaks, right? Like some people are just not going to be a 300%, to target type person. Some of them can
Yeah,
only
yeah, yeah,
120. That's just it. Because
yeah.
you need a combination of skill and will. And some people,
Mm,
frankly, like for me, I can work as hard at playing basketball as much as I want. I'll never make the NBA. It's just not going to happen. I'm going
mm,
to be capped at a certain level, right? Genetics and everything else. So that was definitely a major aha for sure to be able
mm,
to do that. And that has evolved over time to not only do you need to set them up for success when they start, but you also need to develop them throughout the weeks, months, and quarters, but not just in sales skills. Help them become a better version of themselves. Help them improve their life across the board. If you actually do that, you actually reduce turnover and increase performance. So I started to do that as well. And that really started to change the game for me over time. But also it's like focusing on like, how can I make them the best version of them? If I do that at scale consistently, life becomes far easier than just
mm.
hitting your number.
Wow, that was absolute fire. Something about that, what you just said was really important for our audience that's watching this. Like, I think that's really, from good to great leadership. Like, that's really hard, and a very small percentage of people that can not only have it, but also embody it and demonstrate it. Like you just said, like it's like eating that humble pie and saying, that guy gave me a feedback loop that was, I thought it was his fault, but he's saying it's the problem wasn't me. And being able to take that and reflect inside and be able to come up with a plan. That is incredible. It talks about a lot about your character. And I know we're coming to a close here, but criteria for hiring salespeople. Do you have a criteria where you hire based on experience and skill, or do you hire based on potential and hunger?
Good question. It's definitely a combination across the board, right? It depends on what you're selling, which is really important. That's really key because obviously when you sell more complex things, I don't want to say it's experience. I want to
Mm,
see results,
mm,
right? Proven results. So even if it's like someone who has say 15 years in the industry, but they don't have any results, they probably have 1 year
yeah,
experience times 15. That's it, repeated over and over. Versus
yeah, yeah.
someone's been
Good
in
point.
maybe in that field for 5 years, but they're hitting
Mm,
President's Club, hitting elite awards every single year. There's something to be said about that. It depends a little bit what you're selling, but also depends on, okay, what's your comp plan going to look like, and can you attract the right type of people? But I think
mm,
aside from the skill piece, I'm going to look for character. I
mhm,
want certain components of character because, like, I found if you can hire based off the values they already live and embody, it's far easier because I'll take someone, generally speaking, take them with the right values who
mhm,
display that. They don't just talk it, they live it. They
mm,
live the values every single day with zero experience, but they have the right value alignment. I'll take them, generally speaking, over someone who's got 10 years experience, but a misalignment in values. So I'll give you a real good example. I remember I was interviewing this guy and my team I was a director. My team wanted to hire this guy. And I interviewed this guy. He would work like maybe 3 months out of the year. He worked for it was a B2C offer, and he would make about 150, 200 grand in about 3 months. He was selling door-to-door residential, like, alarm systems, right?
yep.
This is in Utah. So during the summertime, he would move to Texas for 3 months and, like, work, stack money, go back, take care of his family of 4. And
Wow.
the sales manager, the general manager, and everyone else in the interview were really impressed with him. On paper, looked amazing. So I bring him
Yeah.
in. He's definitely
Yeah.
confident, gets this level of swagger. I'm like, "Cool, makes a lot of sense." I like confident
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
And I remember asking him to show me how he sold, to show me how you close, because he actually had a little portfolio. He had agreements in there and stuff. I'm like, "Show me how you would present," because he would sell these 2-year contracts for stuff.
Mhm.
And the industry I was in, it was 3 to 5-year contracts at minimum. So you
Yeah.
need to have a level of certain skill to be able to get people to say okay to that. He pulls it out, he takes it out, he folds it over in a certain way and shows me and pitches very smooth. I'm like, very smooth. And he asks for the close. And I pause him and I say, "Hey, why did you fold it over like that?" He's like, "What do you mean? I can't see the whole contract. I can't read everything else." He's like, "Ah, this is totally fine. This is pretty standard. This is what everyone does. I already served your other neighbors." Just act like an objection and just rolled into it. And they're like, "Let me see a contract." pull it open. Of course, all the terms for how long it is above is behind the fold. And I realized very quickly, I'm like, "Were you taught that?" "Yeah, but it's pretty normal. I do it all the time. It's not a big deal." I'm like, "Okay, like, it's a 2-year contract, though. Don't you get objections about that?" He's like, "As long as they know." I'm
Oh
like,
man.
so I'm like, "Okay." I'm like, "That's not the type of business I wanna do." Like, I want people who are good at
No.
sales, but I don't like deceptiveness. I don't like lying. Not
Yeah.
good. Can't have that. Can't have that because not only is it not good values alignment, but on top of that, from running a business perspective, that's a lot of churn on the back end. So
Yeah.
on the back end, you have churn, you have people trying to break contracts, you have issues, etc. I'm like, this is just a nightmare, and this is what makes sales teams look really bad. So that's why the values piece is important. Like you have to have the right values. If they don't have the right values, if I value detail orientation and they're not showing their detail orientation up front,
Mhm. Mhm.
we're probably gonna have a problem, realistically, right? If they show they're sloppy and showing up late, that's gonna be a problem. If they show they're not coachable, that's gonna be a problem. So I remember I had an example of a guy, he actually had 0 B2B sales experience. He had B2C experience selling in gyms, really
Mhm.
successful. He was one of the
Mm.
youngest GMs that Bally's and Bally's is around, tons of records, very successful, did really, really well for himself as a young kid. And the company I was working at, he's actually a referral, so on the team. And pretty buttoned up, clean cut, clean shaven, wear like a shirt and tie at least, if not a full suit.
Yeah, yeah.
And I remember first off, this guy, and I was a brand new sales manager at this company at this point, and I just got promoted. And my team, I know is a dumpster fire. I need to get rid of people on my team. I know that. I need to hire some fresh blood in. It's gonna be rock stars. And
Mhm.
he was actually one of my first interviews, and he shows up 40 minutes late. Okay, 40 minutes
Whoa.
late. So
40
what
minutes. That's
well,
crazy.
so I had like an open encounter for interviews. I'm like, okay. So I remember calling him on the hour he's not there. He's, oh hey, I'm sorry, like I'm just a little bit lost. I never drive this area. I should be there soon. So I'm like, okay, pretty professional, but we'll see. I'm like, I'm
Yeah.
desperate to find good people. It's 40 minutes later. I see this decked out BMW M3 pull up, blacked out car, blacked out windows,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
accent right to the front. I'm like, dude, is this a guy? He walks in, he's not like a clean cut beard, just like I can tell he just hadn't shaved, just like unshaven. He's got a polo that's unbuttoned down to here, like his chest hair is popping out. I can see a gold chain, a couple gold bracelets. He's like a super like fancy nightclub jeans and like dress shoes. And I'm like, this is so strange. This is like a referral
Yeah.
internal who this guy, his buddy is like ex-military, super clean cut. So
Whoa.
I'm like, so I've kind of pictured like he would tell his buddy. So
Yeah, yeah.
this guy comes in and I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna have a conversation with him. Fantastic interview. Really nailed the interview. I challenged him on the close, etc. And he was like, I'll be direct. I'm sorry. I actually did not realize I should have asked. You're right. Okay. He wasn't like defensive or weird. Okay.
Yeah, yeah,
All
yeah,
right.
yeah.
I'll entertain a second interview.
Mm.
So like
Yeah,
second interview, I'm gonna bring him for a field day. I'm like, it's gonna be at
yeah,
7 a.m. So I'm like,
yeah, yeah,
don't be late.
yeah.
6 a.m. he's there. Okay.
Oh, nice.
Completely
Good.
shaven, buttoned up, full suit, decks at nines. I'm like, okay.
Okay.
I think we got something here. I think he'll be coachable.
Yeah,
So anyway, brought him in. Now there's definitely some
yeah.
other thing I had to coach through, but like he ended up being one of the top reps consistently. He's actually still the same companies. Yeah, we're very good friends. He's been
That's
there
so
for
cool.
10 years and he's been promoted multiple
Wow.
times, President's Club. So he went from he had all his credit card debt. So he looked fancy, had a lot of debt. And I actually helped manage his debt. But anyways, he just sent me a text actually on Friday because his life's been incredible. We're very good friends. He's my first hire. So I was like connection with us deep. And
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
he sent me a picture. He loves cars still. That's his whole thing. He's
Yeah,
got
yeah.
his wife has a brand new Range Rover Discovery. He's bought his kids 4 kids now. Little Discovery right there. They have a dream house, dream everything. But he's just living his best life, man. But that's why the values is so key. You have the right values. Sometimes it can offset everything else if they have the right alignment on values.
Wow. There you have it, everyone. From the Oriental village of a 5-year-old Chinese kid who is working the restaurant tables, or at least whatever he could reach, to getting his first cut, doing B2B sales roles, and throwing his application to drafting and architecture, to making these super scary decisions, moving from corporate, from being an award-winning corporate sales master to going on his own to helping B2B sales training. There is a request for a part two. I didn't ask for it, but I would love to have a part two because there's
Sure.
other questions that I have. I think you're amazing. I think we have a lot to learn from you. And obviously, you have done very well, and I can see why. Any last words that you would like to encourage these B2B sales reps who are like, I'm not sure if this is, I'm cut out for this. I'm not
Mhm.
sure if I can be Marcus Chen. And you just said yourself, you're not supposed to be Marcus Chen or Jay Lee, but like
Mhm.
any last words to encourage them who are like on the fence?
100%. So I think first piece is I'm nobody special, right? Despite my parents said I'm nobody special. I had all my issues growing up. That was part of the journey. But what has served me the most is understanding, it's a Jim Rohn quote. When you work hard at your job, you can make a living. But when you
Mm.
work hard on yourself, you can make a fortune.
Ooh, I like that.
And that's a philosophy I've had for almost 2 decades now. And I have found when you work really hard on yourself, and this is why it's really key to investing into yourself. And I'm not saying
Mm.
invest with me or Jay. My point is do something about it. Get books, watch free stuff on YouTube, check out LinkedIn, vet those people out. But then once you're in a position to invest in yourself, get coaches. It cuts your learning curve drastically in half. And I look back and early on, I didn't actually have any sales mentors, but I had
Mm.
business mentors, and that really helped me just shift my paradigm because when you're stuck in your little world, you don't see the whole forest. So I encourage you, if you're thinking about potentially quitting, is take a step back and use a process I call MPP. This is a process I used to use. Even it was like really for managing people, which is first off, you look at the M, the mirror. Okay. It's yourself. Okay. What level of ownership do you have? Number two, what's the process you're doing to try to execute the do? The process could be failed. It could be a combination of mirror and the process. And then the third piece of the people. Who else out there can help you? If you start thinking this way, it's amazing how much faster you can achieve results when you find the right people to align with. Because Jim Rohn said, you are the average of 5 people you spend the most time with.
Wow, wow. And yeah, that's why proximity equals power. And it's so
100%.
important that you, for me, I don't like to be the smartest guy in the room because I know I'm in the wrong room. So thank you
Right.
so much, Marcus, for your precious time. I know we went over time. We will do a part two if Marcus is able to grace us with his insights,
I'm
wisdom,
sure we
and
can make it happen.
presence. So, Marcus, again, thank you so much for your time, and your insights and your stories are incredible. And for those of you guys who are tuning in, thank you for tuning into the Sales Ninja Show podcast. Until next time, we will see you guys later. Take
Thanks so
care.
much.